As anticipated, there will be a Prime Minister Narendra Modi, President Xi Jinping bilaterals on the sidelines of the BRICS Summit in Kazan in Russia. You're watching Stat News Global. I'm Amitabh Revi, and we're going live to Kazan, where our founder and editor-in-chief, Nitin Gokhale, has been following developments very closely there. Nitin, I know it's getting late there, but finally confirmation didn't happen today, but they are confirming there will be a bilateral tomorrow. That's Wednesday.
Indeed, but of course, it's not as late as in Delhi or in India. It's only about 7:30 here, but very cold and windy, I must say. But yes, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri formally confirmed that there will be a bilateral between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping on Wednesday on the sidelines of the main summit, which happens tomorrow. And I think, of course, the anticipation that has been built will be then fulfilled on what exactly they will discuss, what are the contours of the roadmap that they would agree upon. But all that is there. But I think the briefing done by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri also had some interesting details about Monday's agreement on the disengagement in Ladakh. And that's something which I found interesting in today's briefing.
Sure. In fact, let's play out a bit or an excerpt from that MEA special briefing by the Foreign Secretary and then come to you for more analysis on a little more detail that we have now.
Rolling will entail under the agreement that was reached yesterday. Well, what it will entail is that in the pending areas under discussion, patrolling and indeed grazing activities, wherever applicable, will revert to the situation as it obtained in 2020. Incidentally, I should say that this is also what the External Affairs Minister was talking about yesterday when he was speaking at the NDTV World Summit, I think. And as to the other part of your question, what the as far as the disengagement agreements reached previously are concerned, those agreements were not reopened in these discussions. The agreement that was reached yesterday, very early yesterday morning, was focused on issues that had remained outstanding in the last couple of years.
So Nitin, two important points that he's making there, though of course he's talked about them before, and as he mentioned, the External Affairs Minister had also spoken on the same day. But patrolling and disengagement, do we have any more understanding of the nuances there? Because there are a lot of interpretations floating around.
Well, I think he was as clear as he can be that the two outstanding issues that he spoke about without mentioning their names or their locations are clearly well known. Depsang in the northern part of eastern Ladakh and Demchok in the southern part of, or the southern end of eastern Ladakh. Now here the thorny issue of Indian patrols not being allowed to go to the areas that they were used to go before May 2020 has been resolved. He also spoke about grazing rights of Indian the rebos, as they are called, the graziers, who basically in Demchok area, many of them go to the areas which were disputed by China, or there was a standoff. So basically, I think he was talking about these two locations and these two issues. So which essentially means that these two outstanding issues have been resolved. And I think it's interesting to note that the agreement was reached as late as early yesterday morning, early Monday morning. That means the negotiators were burning the midnight oil and beyond. And as we saw in the beginning of the negotiations in 2020 and 2021, the talks can go on for 11 hours, 12 hours, 13 hours sometimes. And clearly, I think they were going on not only for those 11, 12 hours at a stretch, but also for weeks together. Because when NSA, Ajit Doval and Foreign Minister Wang Yi met in Russia a couple of months ago or a month ago, That time, India had insisted that the remaining areas where disengagement has not taken place, that have to be expedited. Negotiations on that and solution on that has to be expedited. So, which has clearly been obtained. India's big ask, just the short-term ask at the moment, was to resolve these two issues so that India regains the patrolling rights which they have got now. The second part of the answer was also interesting, that because there was speculation that, and I think the army chief remarked in a cryptic way that we'll have to ensure this morning, on Tuesday morning, at a function in one of the think tanks, that we'll have to ensure that the Chinese don't come back creeping into the buffer zones that were created between 2021 and 2022 in areas like Hot Springs, Gogra, PP4, that is Petrol Point 4, Finger 4 and Finger 8 on this northern bank of the Pengangso. All that he meant. And that again was clarified by the Foreign Secretary, who said these agreements were not reopened for negotiations. There was no discussion on that. The discussion was that patrolling will resume in these two areas which were outstanding, which means even here, even I would have said this yesterday and speculated that maybe patrolling by the Chinese up to Finger 4 and by India up to Finger 8 would resume. But I think now it is clear that the buffer zones that were created post 2021 and 2022 would remain to be buffer zones and no patrolling zones at the moment. From interpreting from what the Foreign Secretary said, I think this clarification was important in that respect.
Again, when there's talk about we returning to status quo of 2020, there is pre those clashes. Is there clarity on that?
Well, I don't think so yet, and I think the Foreign Secretary did well to tamper down expectations on that. He said we will come to that stage once we start implementing this agreement. And tomorrow, when Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping meet, they would perhaps not only put a stamp of approval on what has been agreed upon on Monday, but also look at what are the next steps. And these steps cannot be in one go, clearly, given the trust deficit that has developed between the two countries over these last 4 years. They'll have to be incremental, they'll have to be well thought out and calibrated going forward. So I expect that the next steps, and I think the Foreign Secretary also answered that towards the end of his briefing, where he said de-escalation and de-induction will come to those 2 points or 2 stages later. First, we'll have to ensure that disengagement is complete, and so that other steps can be taken. And he also hinted that there are these points in the agreement that was reached on Monday, which will be made public or available in due course. We don't know what's the timetable for that. But I presume that after tomorrow's meeting, the government on both sides will start releasing the information because they would have come to an agreement how to do this. So as you would have noticed, except for Indian Foreign Minister's sort of clarification yesterday and now today by the Foreign Secretary again, and one statement, very anodyne and a routine statement by the Chinese Foreign Ministry, no details have been released except for what we heard just now about the 2 outstanding issues, which is added to the points that have been made in the last 24 hours, which I think is a clear sign that the two sides have agreed not to, sort of rush into talking about it until the implementation of these points take place.
So just those points that you were raising there, we can play out another excerpt from the Ministry of External Affairs briefing by the Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri. He's answering questions where reporters were asked in Hindi, so he's answering in Hindi. But he is talking about what you were mentioning, which is disengagement, de-escalation, de-induction. And he also was asked a question on the agreement on patrolling. How does it ensure that no clashes take place like they did before? So this is that excerpt.
कि जो आगे फेस ऑफ्स ना हो, क्लैशेस ना हो, उनको कैसे रोका जाए, मेरे विचार में बहुत ही ये एक अहम आपने सवाल, एक अहम मुद्दा उठाया है। और हमारी आशा है और हमारा प्रयत्न रहेगा कि जो अरेंजमेंट्स वर्कआउट हुए हैं, जिन पे समझौता हुआ है, वो ऐसे अरेंजमेंट्स हो जिनसे इस तरह के क्लैशेस रुक सकें जो पीछे हुए हैं कहीं कहीं पे लाइन ऑफ एक्चुअल कंट्रोल के पास। तो इसमें आगे हमें देखना पड़ेगा और लगातार प्रयत्न करना पड़ेगा, लगातार कोशिश करनी पड़ेगी कि जो मैकेनिक्स हो जो अग्रीमेंट के, वो ऐसे रहें कि इस तरह के जो क्लैशेस हैं उनको रोका जा सके। जहां तक आपका अंतिम प्रश्न है कि डिसएंगेजमेंट हो गया है या हो रहा है और डी एस्केलेशन और डी इंडक्शन की बात कहाँ आती है, मैं फिर से यही कहूंगा कि अभी हमें पहले डिसएंगेजमेंट पे फोकस करना है।
So your again analysis of that in terms of the 3Ds as they are called, and you also spoke about how do you stop or how have you ensured in this agreement that clashes don't take place. You have been talking over the last several days, weeks, and months about possible SOPs.
Indeed, in fact, from what military sources have mentioned, in this particular agreement which was reached on Monday, in those two areas at least, what I think they have agreed upon, and again, it's subject to being corrected when an official briefing or official details are made available, is that there will be coordinated and coordinated patrols from both sides, which means that there will be pre-information given to the other side when patrols are going out to those areas, and there will be no then stoppage or no face-offs that will happen. There have been some speculation in a section of the media that the strength of the patrols would be limited to 14 or 15 or 20, which I think is not a military kind of a system that one follows, because patrol strengths depend on what a particular side is looking to achieve from those patrols, apart from showing flag. So I will not get there because this is pure speculation. But I think Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri has clarified enough to say that one, of course, he hopes and he thinks that these agreements will ensure that there will be no face-offs and clashes that have happened in the previous years, in the last 4 or 5 years. And about de-escalation and de-induction, the other two Ds in the 3D formula that I keep talking about, they will come to it when they'll cross the bridge when they come to it, is essentially what he said in Hindi. So I think it's something that it's a limited thing. Like I said yesterday, that it's too early to be euphoric, too early to be elated. And I repeat that here, that this is just a beginning, because the larger antipathy that China has towards India and India's rise, India's competitiveness is not going to go away so quickly. This border is just one small part of the India-China matrix, India-China equation, which will have long-term implications for the globe and global politics. So therefore, I think one step at a time would be a good idea, and then see what happens. So tomorrow is awaited. Tomorrow's briefing will be awaited eagerly by everyone. And believe me, the West will be watching very carefully, especially the United States of America, because for quite some time it has been trying to get India to try and be the front line against China through Quad, through giving more assistance and intelligence sharing and otherwise. But India has always made it clear in private and in closed door negotiations with the Americans that that game India is not interested in playing, because after all, India is the only country to have a 4,000-kilometer odd disputed land boundary with or land border with China. None of the other Quad countries or the Western nations face physical pushback or physical aggression from China as India does across this entire line of actual control and the McMahon line. So therefore, I think this is where we should sort of tamp down our enthusiasm or euphoria in some sections of the analysis. This has been there. I've been saying this since yesterday that let's take it one step at a time, and which will be something that will be pragmatic, having learned lessons from the standoff over the last 4 years or so.
So as you're saying, like the 3Ds are a process, they won't happen overnight, which has been made clear so far in what they've officially said. And as you again pointed out, considering the fact that China has virtually torn up all agreements post 2020 that India and China have reached, and we've now reached some kind of agreement again. So just to paraphrase, I think it was Ronald Reagan. I mean, he said trust and verify, but here it's probably verify before trusting.
Absolutely. You'll have to verify how they actually, walk the talk really in terms of all these SOPs that have been in place. Which will they follow those SOPs again, or will there be new SOPs that will be put in place, new modus vivendi as they call it in high-flown strategic language. We'll have to watch and wait, of course. But actually compliments to the negotiators, both the military and diplomatic officers, or diplomats and military officers involved in this long drawn process of negotiating what was clearly a no-go for the Chinese, and I mean Depsang and Demchok, where they had an advantage of blocking India. And of course, it also had political implications for India and the ruling NDA government and Prime Minister Modi. So they finally achieved this. Going forward, they will be, and remember, there is a precedence in this. The Sundarangchu incident in Arunachal Pradesh in the late 80s took 7 to 8 years to finally resolve, and that too not to entirely India's satisfaction. So it's Chinese torture, really. These negotiations, as they say. So therefore, let's wait and watch. Is what my assessment, my takeaway from yesterday and today, and especially what's going to happen tomorrow will be.
Since you're talking about precedents, Nitin, just want to remind our viewers through you, there have been similar agreements or between India and China or standoffs being resolved before big meetings.
Always. In fact, Doklam, if you remember, Dolam was resolved exactly because there was a BRICS meeting happening in China, and China was very eager that Prime Minister Modi attends that meeting. So, days before the BRICS summit in China in 2017, the Dolam issue, which is on the trijunction of India, Bhutan, and China, was resolved. Of course, there is the critics keep talking about this also, that Dolam was resolved all right to India's satisfaction, but then it also gave the kind of opportunity or reason for China to build more infrastructure, more aggressive infrastructure in that area, in of course Chinese area, but that has put pressure on India. So something similar has happened in Aksai Chin, in across, opposite Ladakh. But in this case, India has also speeded up its infrastructure building and infrastructure, being put in place, logistics, supply chains for the troops, habitats, living, also mobilizing troops or forces at such short notice. All that has actually worked in India's favor. So had China not done this, I see it from the military point of view, had China not done this, probably India would have trundled along in terms of building infrastructure. What would have been achieved maybe in 15 years with a push has been done in 5 years. And of course, much more remains to be done going forward to catch up. You can never match Chinese deep pockets or catch up with the Chinese infrastructure, which started actually being put in place way back in 1998, 1999. So India can never hope to catch up with China on that. But as long as that infrastructure and the presence of troops across the LAC provides, creates a deterrence in the Chinese mind, that's enough for India. I think that's the short-term and a medium-term aim as far as Indian nation state is concerned. And of course, the military is one part of that.
If you want to just conclude in terms of, you were talking about the negotiations that have been done, whether it's WMCC or the military commanders. Apart from that, NSA Ajit Doval has met Wang Yi, EM has met Wang Yi in bilaterals. The Prime Minister had pull asides, not structured meetings, both in Bali and in South Africa. But if there is some kind of agreement between the two countries, is it too early to say what happens to the dialogue process? Because India has made it clear that nothing else will really progress unless we go back to status quo 2020.
That's true. And so this is like a step-by-step process, as I mentioned. So could it be that now that the two thorny issues have been resolved in Depchok and Depsang, would the next step that will logically follow be probably the special representatives dialogue? On Indian side, it's the special representative is NSA Ajit Doval. On the Chinese side, it's Wang Yi at the moment, but could be somebody else going forward. Could there be other CBMs that would be agreed upon going forward without getting into the nitty gritty of how de-escalation and de-induction will take place? All that will be there, but India's ask as far as de-escalation and de-induction will remain on the table. And that's like a pressure point. And like I said, compliments to the negotiators for holding on with patience. That has been our undoing in the past. But I think we have learned over the years from the Chinese to be patient and not rush into trying to broker an agreement or achieve an act, which sort of, then tick marks your achievements or does one item on the agenda is taken care of. I think that's something that has changed over these 4 or 5 years.
Right, Nitin. So we'll leave it there for the moment and, of course, come back to you with the much anticipated bilateral meeting and other developments at BRICS in Kazan. Coming back to you and, of course, our video journalist, Vashish Matu, who's with you. Also want to give a big shout out to our production team here.
No, to all of you there for being there so late and also making it possible so quickly, because the press briefing just finished just now. So again, compliments to the hardworking team back there in Delhi. But of course, here we will bring you whatever we can as quickly as possible.
That's it then from us at Stat News Global, but do keep tuned for all the latest from Kazan. And of course, you can keep track of all international developments on our website and other developments through the videos that we put up on our YouTube channel. This is Stat News Global. I'm Amitabh P.